switch the topic now to research and what is real research versus fake research versus, somewhere in between research.
If I could just take a few minutes just to talk about what you might call a very real research project done quite a long time ago. It's probably one of the most famous and infamous research projects ever conducted, I think, in history. I'm not an expert, but I believe it's got to be up there. That is the study of Alfred Kinsey on basically people's sexual habits in the United States. Now, just to give you an example, this guy was just to give you a bit of background, this guy was an entomologist, I believe. He was a biologist. He spent his life counting these things called gall wasps, etc. And look, long story short, he's a professor at a university. Long story short, he gets funding, applies for and gets funding by the Rockefeller Institute to conduct this extremely large-scale study of human sexual behavior. And he starts with, and this is published, he publishes a book in 1948 called The Sexual Behavior in the Human Male, right? It comes, and get this, okay? This is what I want to talk about, real research, right? Get this. This was done by a team of maybe 3 or 4 people, him and an assistant and someone else, I believe. And they interviewed, get this, hold on, I've got these numbers in front of me, 5,300 face-to-face interviews across the United States. Look, it was during the war years and after the war, it was only white males at the time. That's just the way society was in America at the time. It was a study of white males only. But nevertheless, it was 5,300 males that they studied face-to-face. And the way they would do this is they'd be trained, because think about this, they're collecting people's sexual histories, right? Think about this. You're asking people to tell you about their most intimate parts of their life, in a way, in a face-to-face situation, right? So they had this special training program where people were asked to, or were trained to ask questions in a particular way, right, to elicit trust. Lots and lots of qualitative interviewing techniques that we use. I'm not saying they started them, but we use them today, which is you come in and you put the person at ease, for example. You might even tell a little joke. You might, do something to create a little bit of rapport. And then you never judge what they say. Never, ever, ever judge what they say about anything at all, right? Especially in this. And they had then memorized a coding system. So they all had a sheet in front of them, and they had this coding system where they would put answers in this coding system, memorized. This is all memorized, because he said, if you've got books and papers in front of you, the interview just goes to crap, right? They're not going to trust you. It just looks like it's a fake interview. Right, so make it look, so they memorize it and they make these little notations, and all this would be fed into punch. Remember, you don't remember, you're too young. You don't remember punch cards, but punch cards into mainframes. 5,000. These interviews range, depending on the person's sexual history, from 15 minutes to 6 hours in some instances, and they would sit there meticulously noting everything, fed it all back into a computer system. It was both a qualitative and a quantitative project at the same time. It was indistinguishable in that respect, right? Although it wasn't a psychoanalytic interview where they're trying to figure out the psychology behind all sex and this and that and fetishes, not at all. It was just more of a kind, and that's what they said, sexual behavior in the human male. And they published it, 5,300 interviews conducted primarily by 2 people, with another 1 or 2 helping out, and then a little team at the back doing the data and all that sort of stuff. Publishes this book in 1948, and it becomes a bestseller in the United States, right? The Sexual Behavior in the Human Male. The Rockefeller Institute makes squillions of dollars. Kinsey becomes humongously famous, giving lectures around the country in puritanical America about sexual behavior in the human male. He's able to do this because he himself is so dispassionate about the whole thing. It's like he's studying gall wasps, right? Sexual behavior. Anyway, the Institute makes tons of money. Kinsey becomes really famous, world famous actually, at the time, as far as you could back then. And they give him even more money. And then he does this and then he proceeds to interview 6,000 American white women and publishes a book called Sexual Behavior in the Human Female. 5 years later, Nick, think about that. 5 years after that mammoth task of the first book, 5 years later only, conducts another 6,000 face-to-face interviews across the country, roughly with the same team, and produces an even more mammoth work, which is, and get this now, the politics, This book bombs, and Kinsey is just basically becomes a persona non grata. Apparently, in puritanical America, no one wanted to read about the sexual behavior of women, just about men or something like that. And there's all kinds of things happen. That's not the point. The point is that this is a mammoth qualitative and quantitative project. It is what you call at the coalface, asking people directly, face to face, getting this information. I don't think it's ever really been replicated in its scope or scale. Who could do that nowadays, right? And the question I have now, Nick, is sorry for that intro, but it is a very, very interesting project, that one, from a research point of view, and very nuanced in its insights and outcomes, right? Not black and white at all about people's sexual behaviour. It just shows all of the all of the nuances, and it's very fascinating stuff.